She did not set out to become a fashion icon. If you had told young Amelia Jenks that one day her name would be attached to one of the most controversial outfits in American history, she probably would have hated that sentence immediately. Amelia was not trying to become edgy. She was not trying to shock people. She was not trying to launch a trend, break the internet, or become the 19th century patron saint of, girl, just wear the pants. She was serious, religious, moral, ambitious. She wanted to improve society. She wanted women to be treated like thinking human beings. She wanted reform, dignity, education, and justice. What she did not want was to become forever associated with an outfit that half the country thought was ridiculous, indecent, or socially radioactive. And the funniest part is this: she did not even invent it. That is the first twist in this story. The woman whose name became permanently attached to one of the most famous garments in American women's history was not the original designer. She was the amplifier, the publicist, the accidental influencer before influencing was a career path. And that, honestly, is very American, because this is not just a story about pants. It is a story about image, politics, gender, mass media, technology, and the eternal human struggle between what is practical and what society will actually let you get away with in public. Today we argue about dress codes, comfort versus style, gender signaling, workplace norms, athletic wear in public, and whether fashion can ever be just fashion. The 19th century did all of that too, only with more newspapers, more moral panic, more whalebone, and way more fabric. So let's go back. Amelia Jenks was born in 1818 in upstate New York into a modest tailor's family. On paper, her life was supposed to be very ordinary. In that world, for a girl of limited means, the expected path was narrow: marry, manage a household, have children, endure, maybe help, rarely lead. But Amelia wanted education. That mattered. Education was not just a nice accomplishment for a woman then. It was a route out of confinement. It was one of the few socially acceptable ways a woman could build a mind, a voice, and a little bit of independence before marriage swallowed the whole project. So she became a teacher, then a governess, and eventually, she landed in Seneca Falls. Now, if that town name rings a bell, that is because Seneca Falls is not just some random dot on the map. Now, if that town name rings a bell, that is because Seneca Falls is not just some random dot on the map. It became one of the symbolic birthplaces of the organized women's rights movement in the United States. In 1848, the Seneca Falls Convention produced the Declaration of Sentiments, a document that deliberately echoed the Declaration of Independence and announced, in essence, that women were tired of being treated like decorative legal minors. So, Amelia was standing in exactly the kind of place where a smart, morally driven woman could stop merely surviving and start participating in reform. And reform in mid-19th century America was everywhere. This is the point where modern people sometimes get confused. You look at these reformers and think, wait, why are the same women talking about alcohol abuse, women's rights, education, religion, clothing, and family law all at once? Pick a lane, ladies. But to them, these were not separate lanes. They were one traffic jam. Many reform-minded Americans, especially in Protestant and Quaker circles, saw society as a moral system that had gone wrong in multiple places at once. If women were denied legal autonomy, if slavery existed, if men drank away household income, if violence inside families was normalized, if education was limited, if religion was used to justify hierarchy, then all of these things were connected. Different symptoms. Same broken order. And from the perspective of many women, one issue linked all the others. Dependence. Dependence on fathers, dependence on husbands, dependence on law, custom, clergy, and public opinion. Dependence so deep that a woman might do enormous labor and still have no recognized authority over money, children, property, movement, or even her own body in the way a modern person would expect. And then there was alcohol. 19th century America drank a lot. Not a cute wine with dinner amount. A serious civilization scale amount. Reformers blamed alcohol for violence, poverty, illness, crime, workplace failure, and the collapse of families. Some of that was moral panic, yes, but some of it came from real household suffering. Because in practice, for many women, a husband's drinking was not an abstract social issue. It was rent money gone, food money gone, safety gone, stability gone. A drunk husband could humiliate the family, squander income, and make domestic life terrifying. a woman often had limited legal recourse. Divorce was hard, custody systems usually favored fathers. Property law was stacked against wives. Even when reforms were beginning in some states, daily reality lagged far behind ideal law. So when women became active in temperance, they were not just being prudish, they were often fighting for survival inside the home. That is one of the most important things to understand about early women reformers. They were not floating in abstract theory. They were dealing with daily systems of vulnerability. The home, which later nostalgia would romanticize as feminine sanctuary, could also be the place where female powerlessness was most brutally enforced. So yes, the women fighting for legal reform, suffrage, temperance, and dignity often overlapped. Of course they did. They had correctly identified that the problem was structural. At some point, Amelia married Dexter Bloomer, a law student who supported her ideas. That mattered too. History is full of women who were brilliant enough to change the world and trapped enough not to. A supportive husband was not liberation, but it could be leverage. Dexter encouraged Amelia to write, and that helped launch the platform that changed everything, the Lily. In 1849, Amelia Bloomer became associated with the Lily, a newspaper devoted to women's concerns, temperance, and reform. It began modestly, but it grew into something bigger than a niche moral newsletter. It became a place where domestic life, public life, and women's rights could speak to each other. It included commentary, advice, opinion, politics, and debate. In other words, it became exactly what powerful media often becomes, a tool that starts with one issue and ends up creating a community. And that community was listening, which meant that when Amelia later started talking about clothing reform, people did not hear it as one random woman yelling about fabric. They heard it through an existing network of trust. That part is crucial, because clothing, especially women's clothing, was never just clothing. It was social meaning sewn into fabric. Before we get to the Bloomers themselves, we need to pause and appreciate just how impractical women's fashion had become by the 1840s and early 1850s. When people hear Victorian dress, they often imagine elegance, soft portraits, full skirts, grace, maybe some moody oil paintings, and a piano in the corner. What they should also imagine is logistics. Women's dress in this period could be physically exhausting. Skirts were long, layered, and heavy. Petticoats added bulk. Horsehair fabrics and stiffened materials created shape, but they also created drag, weight, and inconvenience. The ideal silhouette was not built around ease of movement. It was built around appearance. And appearance, as usual, was expensive. Not always in money. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. In the next part, we'll talk about what happened when women finally tried to change the way they dressed, and why one outfit caused a national scandal.